Welcome everyone to episode 339 of Just Joshing. I'm your host Joshua Pantellaresco. I write stuff in podcast 2. Part 2 of my conversation with Vox Pop Games is about to air. There's a little overlap from part 1. I go from where the language of video games is interaction, and past that point, this was, like I said, I learned an awful lot with this conversation. I think this is one of the best conversations I've ever had. It was very educational. And as I said earlier, Marc and Anthony Rodriguez, Charles, you are two very passionate, caring guys about their craft. And yeah, I think we'll talk about the app at the end and ways to contact them. But I think for now, we'll just get into part 2 and no preamble. Let's just do it, shall we?
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
So, but
No problem.
yeah, it's kind of cool the how it did. So, I guess. I'm gonna ask a big question because you both have more experience in this world than I do. Where do you see that language going in the future?
Well, with hopefully with Vox Pop's platform launch,
Yes.
going in a direction where more content is vocalized, not just through us, but through the general community. We're opening these doors to everyone, and it's sort of like that caveat of like opinions are like a-holes and everyone has one and all this other stuff. We're not trying to go that far and be like troll bait and stuff like that. We're trying to serve a community that is not just underserved, but is really truly unique, wholly unique in the fact that the ideas and the artistry that is presented should have a larger vocal presence in just our everyday lives. They take up however long they take for gameplay time. They take up a whole bunch of different things. So seeing where this genre, I don't want to say just genre, but where the platform goes is just an immediate goal right away for us. That's where I can take it.
It's very difficult to predict trends, of course.
Yes.
But I can say what I hope will happen, right? The sort of a topic that people are discussing a lot is representing experiences, and sort of the difficulty of representing various people's experiences sensitively, right? But one thing I think, but these are stories that need to be told, right? And one thing I think games have a unique advantage of representing that. Film or book or painting, piece of fine art could adequately represent its entirety is mental health, because games are experiential, right? And I already told you about Depression Quest and how it sort of tries to represent the lack of motivation that comes with depression.
Yes.
I think he's maybe coughing spell.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
I wanted to jump in real quick. Besides, I don't want to say like a quick plug, but on our platform we are having a bunch of mental health awareness, not necessarily centric games, but games that do feature that, like Into a Dream by one of our partners, Philippe Thomas. It's a pretty much a story-driven narrative about depression, loneliness. It's like a Inception style game where you're trying to get through these different quests. It's a beautifully realized art piece. So I wanted to interject that with something that we are featuring on our platform before Charles continued on. Sorry to sort of jump in, but I wanted to focus on that and just really point that out, that that's something that we are trying to focus on as well.
Actually, to be honest, I was also going to plug Into a Dream, so I beat me to the punch there.
Yes. Well,
And the next thing I wanted to add, though, which isn't a plug for our platform, I promise, is that when it comes to video game language, I think VR is the big untested proving ground a lot of video game language that we've developed over the years just doesn't apply in VR anymore. Because we can't always control the camera and the motion and all that, right? And we have to balance it against vertigo and the player experience, right? I see VR as having a separate language, which is very much still developing. And, I think that's sort of the future of experimenting with interactivity.
I think the key to VR is going to actually be chaos, because real life never actually, like, to truly make something feel real, there has to feel like there's an element that's uncontrolled. Now, to what degree of that will feel like, I have no idea, but I feel like that's like, you will always feel it's just a game unless the environment has that feeling, or at least the illusion of a momentary lack of control.
I would expect that from the my years and years of game development. I think that I want to say, if not 10 to maybe 15 years from things getting to spec that would be on par with, maybe the closest thing is like a Ready Player One style game. Like that we're never going to get full immersion unless we're doing sort of neural netting and all this other stuff. Yeah. So unless we're having microchips and Matrix style, augmentations to our bodies, we're never going to get that immersive thing. But like I always try to bring about, we are living that anyway. Elon Musk came out with are we living some sort of ARG from Aliens? Are all of our lives interconnected as a video game for eternity?
I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's my perspective. I'm saying that's one perspective that is being presented to us. I believe in our medium and in our sort of dimensional plane that we're going with, that we're all here and virtually. Again, to bring it back to the first joke.
Yes.
We are coming to that spec where the hardware is not gonna be ready for our BioWare. The hardware is not gonna be ready for our biological makeup. There's a very, very hard thing with VR. The frame of entry is slimming down now, because things are becoming a little bit more jokey and memey, and everything there's no way to separate reality yet. You're still always playing that interactive game that gets a lot of people motion sickness and dizziness. So that the spec isn't there hardware-wise. So if we're gonna go through the testing grounds of motion controls with the Wii or the Kinect, all of those sort of forms of the medium sort of trailed off and had like a really big spike. Charles and I were sort of looking at the Fuser. The biggest, I guess, show floor item at PAX East was the Harmonix Fuser booth, which has to be at least a $25,000 spend for this DJ game that has everyone, like a Rock Band style game where you have an add-on peripheral controller and you're playing, faux DJ at like Coachella or like Burning Man. But this spec of this huge marketing spend on this gigantic DJ booth was sort of like, well, why not just buy a regular DJ set? Why not just become a DJ? Like it's sort of like, are we gonna say that we're gonna market this as this huge like next Rock Band style thing, which it will be. That is gonna be the case. They're going full steam ahead with that. They're going full in. So what we want to sort of go back to is, if VR is that sort of uncharted territory and we're not testing it, we have to put a timeline on where we're going to be able to be indistinguishable from our own reality and where games take off. That's the point I wanted to make. Charles, jump in with your transdimensional markup or whatever you wanted to kill me with.
Charles?
Sorry about that. I had a coughing fit right as he mentioned my name.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes. I don't really have much to add to what Marc had said, but I just want to say I think immersion and realism are totally overrated when it comes to video games. I think sometimes that separation can be important to experiencing the story properly. There's always going to be an element of video games where bit of a disconnect, right? Like, a video game is essentially a second-person narrative in a way. They sort of tell you who you are. You are, a soldier in the American Army. Your name is, I don't know, Maze Hughes, and you're in the trenches at the Somme. All right, go, right? Or even games that don't give you a ton of backstory, they still have to explain how you arrive. You are a prisoner in a caravan who was caught running across the border illegally, and now you're being brought to a military fort in the mountains to be executed because you happened to be running at the same time as the rebel leader got caught, right? Something like that. And there's always, you can only represent so many options as well when you make choice a part of the game, right? So a good example is Mass Effect. BioWare can't record every possible response that somebody might conceivably have in a situation, right? They have to limit it to a certain number of pre-recorded, pre-animated responses, right? So there's always going to be an element of the game saying, you feel this, you think this, you want to do this. And a player there's always going to be that part of the player that's like, no, I don't. Right? You can't completely overcome that, nor should you have to as a storyteller. That's not important. That's not the core part of the experience. That's why I always think it's a lazy criticism when they say, oh, this isn't realistic. This breaks my immersion. Well, screw you, dude. That's not it doesn't matter. What do you care?
Well, listen, the VR folks are they're gonna have at you because they want full immersion, brother. They want full.
Okay, I am immersed in my real life and it sucks. I don't need that in my video games.
Yes, everyone. So we want this escape. Okay, we want this escape from reality. I went into this ad nauseum, but we want an escape. So the escape that we all go into is, I want to be a cowboy, I want to be a spaceman, I want to be a pirate, I want to be like all of these different things. And I think that no one's ever really talking about, I want to be one pixel. I want to be one specific pixel on a board. And where do you go from there? No one right now is thinking of going back to that Pong aspect of games, because I think that some of the most truly immersive things are the games that don't spoon feed you and we've been accustomed. I mean, I'm gonna be quite honest. We did it a lot at Rockstar. You're spoon fed. Get out of car. Press triangle to get in car. To press up to change radio. Like, you need to know all of these things just to operate the experience, just to operate this art. And I think that with a lot of the designers, developers that are coming up, not now, but like the resurgence of this sort of minimalistic experience, like an Undertale or One Shot, or like these things that are like very, very, even Charles has some specs. I'm pretty sure he wants to go into, but like going back to the singularity of what do you feel when you play as this one thing? I think that if we're taking it outside of any realm of what we've seen in pop culture, pirate, cowboy, spaceman, and go back to the granularity of it, I think we might be on to something. Charles, please caveat with what I was just talking about when we were in Boston.
Oh, well.
The one button.
Oh, the one button game. Okay, that's actually not what I wanted to talk about. I can talk about that. Yeah. Anyway.
Well,
one of the games I've designed. It's a game that's meant to be played with one button. It's an action RPG that's based around timing. You can almost think of it as a rhythm game. And the idea is that while the player's holding the button, they're attacking. When they let go, they enter a block mode. They briefly have a perfect block, etc., etc. It's all about timing and watching enemy animations and the like. And I designed that game originally because it was a class prompt, I had this class called Pixel Prototype where every single week we had to make an entire new game. It was rough. And one week the prompt was 1-button game, but the more I got into it, the more I loved this design. That was the funny thing is we got to skip 2 weeks, right? There's like every week you make a game, but you get 2 passes, or else you fail, right? This is one of the weeks where like everyone passed basically. But I really like this spec because I think it could really be a kind of game that people with who are I forgot what term I'm supposed to use. Not handicapped, but
just disabled gamers, able gamers.
Yeah, just disabled gamers. So it's something like that, a kind of game that could pair really well with able gamers and the like, right? And that's one of the reasons I want to do the spec. So I think that's what what Marc wanted me to say.
Okay. So what do you want to say?
I mean, we sort of got off this topic, I guess, but if I could talk about game theory for a second here.
Go ahead.
So, you've probably never heard this name, Johann Huizinga, right? He is a sort of philosopher who wrote the book on play, like literally wrote the book on play and theories around play, right? Called Homo Ludens. And
I have heard the book, actually, but yeah.
Oh, really?
I've heard the book. I haven't read it, but I have heard the book.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, the gist of the important part is Huizinga theorizes that one of the critical aspects of play that's important for it to be play and not just anything else, right, is a willingness to participate in play. He calls this the illusory attitude, right? If you don't have a willingness to sort of suspend reality and engage in a made-up game, it's not really play, right? And that's what I think annoys me so much about the immersion argument whenever people use it as a point of criticism. I feel it's bad faith criticism almost. Because when we choose to play a game, we sort of choose to be immersed in this world, right? There's an element of choice there. We choose to take this world for what it is. And that's why I think it's a lazy criticism. Immersion, and that's why I think also perfect immersion is an impossible standard to strive for, even with VR, even with anything, right? The player has to be willing to engage with the game. Nothing we do as game designers can force the illusory attitude into somebody who doesn't want to engage with the game on that level.
May I provide an interesting counterpoint to you, though?
Go ahead.
So here's my counterpoint. Okay, this is where I actually agree with you by and large, with a caveat. And this is my caveat. I think it's up to the game designer to try to do everything in their power within the rules of whatever universe they're playing to get you to buy in. I think where the immersion is actually a fair criticism. Okay, I love the Persona series, right? I love the Persona series, but it asks you very early in the game to go through a process. But if you go through this process and you buy in, these games are amazing. If you don't, right, you just skip the game, and because it's a necessary part. It's an instruction manual, but it also sets up the world building and tone of the game, which is why some people don't like the series, because it does take usually a little time to get started, right? But for someone like me that loves the series, it's something I'm willing to do. It's like, you know what, I'll play along just to see where it's going to lead me, because I think the reward is worth it. I think what I'm saying is, I think anyone that wants to use that I can't get into the real world argument, they might be saying, this is what they might be saying, is that maybe the game is doing something where it's cheating that experience, or it hasn't done enough to get someone to buy into what's going on.
Sorry, I might not have clarified my position enough. I definitely think games can fail.
Yeah.
In this regard, I think games fail when they do not have consistent rules.
Mm-hmm.
Right. My little tirade was specifically about people who want games to be realistic. They want to play. They say we want this game to play by reality's rules, right?
Oh, that doesn't exist.
Can obey their own rules, but as long as those rules are consistent,
yeah,
then it's not generally a problem. People have to, on a certain level, you have to kind of ask the player to agree to those rules, right?
Yeah.
But yes, of course, when those rules are poorly enforced, when they're completely inconsistent, you can easily break a player out of those the experience.
Yeah. No, I do generally agree with you saying. Like, games should be games. And this is where I think I completely do agree with you. Games need to feel like games, and that's actually sometimes a very important part of the experience. It's like when I look at a comic book, I don't necessarily want to buy the book with the most realistic drawings. One of my favorite books was a comic called Impulse. It was just a hyper-kinetic book. It looks very hyper-kinetic, and it's also one of the most fun books I've ever read. Because but again, it fits the experience it's intended for, right? And that is, I think, what every game should shoot for. I actually agree with you completely there. I think immersion or realistic in that term, it is a very lazy criticism. I actually agree with you there. So, by the way, loved your FMA joke. I'm glad you're an FMA fan. So,
yeah, I couldn't think of a name off the top of my head. So
no, it was good. It's like I got. It's like, okay, me and you will get along just fine, just perfectly. Well, guys, I think we definitely had some fun so far. So you talk about your platform. Can you talk about the games that are going to initially be rolled out? Can you talk about what's kind of coming up that way as a start, or like where are you guys at in terms of where in terms of development and your launch?
As of this moment, we are still looking for partners to join us in our beta, but I think Marc can speak to some of the partners that have signed on with us already.
Yeah, not to be too pluggish, but I did promise a bunch of our key developers and designers. So of course, Indie Imprint is like they sort of bridge this gap with us. Josh, they sort of set things up. Mike and Jessica. We're dealing with a studio. We're sort of dealing with worldwide studios at this point. So we have over 30 games signed, and for our initial beta, we're working towards more, and more partners are going to be announced post PAX. We're in contract with a bunch of new partners. We're trying to get everyone. We have just real quick, Ayla Myers. We have Dietrich. We have Attack Mountain out of Queens. They're coming out with their attack pack. We have Sam Domenico with Corporate America. We have the whole gamut of pixel art, 3D, fully 3D realized properties. We have Gilded Octopus Studios. We have a bunch of really cool and excited devs just looking to not necessarily like a lot. Some of them are hosted on various sites, so distro sites. So we're not bridging the gap yet. But a big key thing that I think Charles and I wanted to put forth is our next steps. Like, where do we go from here next? Mm-hmm. So I know Charles had mentioned the micro investment engine, and I would want him to sort of introduce that exclusive reveal before we go on to anything else. And then I wanted to follow up with our sort of development and where we might go from there.
All right, this seems like an ideal time to go for that. So Charles, would you like to unveil it?
Yeah. So the micro investment engine is something we essentially envision as an alternate form of crowdfunding. And I'll get into why it's better than existing methods in a little bit. But essentially the idea is that developers can sell shares in their game. Anybody who owns those shares, once the game is shipped, will automatically get a small percentage of the game's revenue based on how many shares they own, how much they paid in, etc., right? And players can trade them between each other once the game ships as well, right? So it's something they can, buy and sell. And the idea is then that these players sort of get to take a stake in the well-being of this game, and they're invested in it as well. They want that game to do well. So,
So, sorry. No, it's okay. Do you mind? It sounds a little bit kind of like a stock market, kind of. Not quite the same thing where people are going to do these crazy like mad purchases, but the idea is you can invest in the game, and you can ultimately sell your share in the game. It sounds like, or trade your share in the game for something else, right?
The idea is that it's primarily meant to pay dividends, and so you get a percentage of the profit as it goes on. But it is something that I envision that we could trade. The idea is much in the same way, companies go public and they put shares on sale in the stock market to raise funds, to do things, right? And in the same way, any developers that decide to trade shares in their game would be doing so to get budget to work on that game. They're sort of trading a small percentage of their future revenue so that they can actually make the game properly. Now, there are two reasons why we see this as superior to traditional crowdfunding. And the first is easily the most obvious, because crowdfunding introduces a ton of extra work for developers who try to make their games that way. I don't have the exact percentage on hand, but I believe it's a little over 70% of all games that met their Kickstarter goals actually never got finished.
Yep.
And one of the biggest reasons for that is because your Kickstarter reward tiers introduce a ton of extra work for your dev team. Work that a lot of times you're probably not actually trained to do, right? So let's say, I put on one of my reward tiers. I'm gonna make toys. I'm gonna make T-shirts. I'm gonna ship them out to everyone who reaches these tiers, right? Well, now I gotta design the merch. I gotta manufacture the merch, and I got to get a team together to mail out all of the merch that we have. So suddenly, all of the money that we raised to that point, right? I have to spend a significant portion of it not actually making my game, but just designing, manufacturing, and shipping out all the merch that I promised the people who backed, right?
A lot of these
and
games.
What if?
Yeah, a lot of these games sort of. Sorry to cut you off, Charles. A lot of these games actually bread and butter that. There's going to be a lot of exposés coming in these next couple of years as we start evaluating like the Kickstarter crowdfunding, where a lot of these are just merch ideas, like ideas for T-shirts or low poly toy specs and dunnies and all these different little specs that is just they don't want to make a game, they want to make the art of the game. So that's another sort of caveat. Sorry, Charles, I didn't want to cut you off.
And obviously the most extreme example of this would probably be My Number 9, right? By Inafune. Right, he was like, "Oh yes, we're gonna have a game. We're gonna have a comic book. We're gonna have all these toys. We're gonna have an animated series."
Yeah, Netflix.
Totally out of scope for your dev team. And let's be honest, indie devs, most of us are really bad at scoping, right? Like everybody overpromises. It happens, but when it comes to Kickstarter, that's a problem.
Yes.
That's fun, right? And the other thing is, right? Like, what if fewer people reach that reward tier than you expected? What if you have like $100 reward tier, but only 12 people paid in that? Well, you still got to do it, right? But now you're losing money on that reward tier because fewer people made it there than you thought there would. But you still have to go through all the legwork of doing that thing. And even if the only thing you promise is in-game content, right? Even if you promise nothing to do with merch, right? Just in-game content. That's still a lot of extra work for that in-game content. That's hours that you're not spending on the base game, which you still needed to do, which is what you needed the funding to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people don't realize that everything you work on in your game, that's money. Time is money, right? And if you needed the money to make the base game, then all of the extra content you promised, that's money that's not going to the development of the base game if you finish it, right? So a lot of these teams end up collapsing because they created so much more work for themselves. Oh, by the way, running the campaign itself is also a non-trivial amount of work, right?
That's based marketing.
Yeah.
Like a good core of their like 70% time spent is marketing the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you finding time to dev this thing? This is where I want to sort of caveat and bridge the gap back into the platform. And we're gonna, by extension, there's game development that has to go on for us for exclusivity for our own like properties. So these are things that we're planning towards, and we've already, like with my background and all of these AAA studios dealing with crowdfunding stuff, Charles's experience as a designer, we're trying to avoid these pitfalls. We're trying to help our partners that are still trying to actively do this and find other funding venues. We're not trying to stop them from that. We're actively trying to promote different ways and maybe possibly using our platform as one of those channels for funding. If and so that they want to create something, some art assets, some exclusivity windows, something that will be wholly Vox Pop, because we're trying to have them evolve from just a merch center and just a spec out, studio. We don't want that. We don't want a whole bunch of art studios. That's cool, but where do the playables come into play? Where do the games, like where are the games? that's the main caveat.
And to bring it back to the investment engine for a second, right, is one of the reasons why the micro investment engine is superior to something like Kickstarter, or is that this is something that developers don't need to introduce extra work for themselves. There is a utility to investors, right? So there is an incentive to invest, but it's not an incentive that requires more work from the developer. Makes sense?
You're trying to focus the time on the thing that actually matters, which is the game itself.
Exactly. Now, the second reason why it's better than something like Kickstarter is because it's also better for the investor. So one thing that we can list easily is sort of the track record for each of these developers. You can see on our platform how well any of their games have sold, right? One thing we want to introduce is just list, what percentage of did their investors make their money back on this game, basically, right? You can think of it as a developer credit score. That'll be publicly available. And it's one way that gamers can hold developers accountable for the promises that they've made. You very publicly, very easily, very visibly see, did they fulfill their promises? And then you should know, then you can know, okay, this is somebody that I can safely invest in because they've fulfilled their promises before.
Which is ultimately, I actually say, like, personally, like, one of the most important things you have as any kind of business is your integrity and your authenticity. And if you have to be able to fulfill your promises on some level. And if you can't do that, you go out of business, essentially. Yes. So this is. It seems like you've thought about this on both ends very well.
Yes, extremely. This is one of those sort of world premiere announcements that we were saving for post PAX. This was going to be like a blog entry. Now it's going to be multiple facets of just our overall approach for the platform partners.
Yes,
we're trying to make this something that is a mainstay and is sort of unavailable right now in the current market space. So this is wholly unique to Vox Pop.
Yeah. Which, hey, if you get on the ground floor and it works out, man, good. God bless you both. Good luck, man. It's smart. I'll give you guys that. It's very, very shrewd. So Charles, are you done on your end, or is there more to it that you can reveal?
I'm finished. I've said my piece.
Okay.
Although, yeah, if there's anything that you feel needs to be clarified.
No, it's very clear. I just want to make sure it's all done because Marc was talking about, like, unveiling some stuff after the investment. So that's basically what you're promising. So for Marc.
Yeah, so we're like I said, just going down the dev list. We have Chromavaders by Corundum Games. We got games from Salt and Pixel Studios. So that's just the base level. Like I said, there's a bunch of things in the works.
Yes.
But future forecasting is we eventually get to the spec of internal development. Like that's a ways off. Right now, our main focus is the store. Our main focus is the distribution and advocacy and connecting streamers. We have all of our social media channels available. We have our Discord that's growing by the second. We have an amazing team. Today I had the privilege of meeting with our, we have these sort of weekly meetups where we meet up with our core team members. Holly Welch, which is Vox Pop Holly, her handle, and Alicia Augustine is our platform software engineer. These are core, like, foundational members of the platform that really are putting their heart and soul and pouring everything that they can give into this venture. So I wanted to give them quick shout outs as well. As far as speccing and scoping for our internal games, those are a ways off, but I please believe they are going to be wholly unique and Vox Pop centric. So it's not necessarily we're selling games that are going to be only a flavor of our platform, but they're going to be diverse in palette and hopefully satisfy gamers' need to play different things different ways. Charles had mentioned things earlier about his projects, and those are some of the specs that we're investigating. I have a bunch of GDDs on the back burner that I'm trying to get visibility on. We spoke about a whole bunch of things on the drive up to Boston. So for the immediacy, it's just reaching out to us. Right now, at any given time, I've been doing a whole bunch of outreach, developer outreach. Any of your listeners that are developers that would want to reach out in terms of partnerships, they could email me at Marc. A whole bunch of other FAQ investigation on the website. They could sign.
Okay.
I think I'm going to sort of that's the beta spec for Charles right now.
Okay, so I got one big question, and then we'll actually wrap up the official part of the interview with a big giant plug. So I have two questions. How did you two meet? Because I'm curious. When you mentioned this, you mentioned briefly that you guys were associated via LinkedIn. When did you guys make that real decision? Like, we can do this. This is a very doable thing.
Oh man, I don't.
August. I was August. It was last August.
Last August.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
Almost a year.
Yeah. We're getting close. We're getting close to it, Charles.
Yeah. So after that, I spent like 6 months running around Silicon Valley begging for money.
So it definitely learned the hustle of doing that, I'm sure. Jeez.
No, that Charles was being a little bit facetious. He was part of a really, really amazing startup incubator F50. So it wasn't just a beg, it was a pitch, it was a whole kit and caboodle that he was in with City.
Okay,
I want to say Charles is like the New Yorker at heart, but he's a California boy through and through. We were freezing in Boston, standing outside of a ramen shop for about a half an hour trying to get ramen on Friday night. So
I don't think that's terribly relevant.
It's all good. No.
No. I'm not trying to sour or throw anyone under the bus. So our meeting was just onboarding. So we met a bunch of times virtually. We met on the phone, and then we did in person. I did it in person with the executive chairman and Charles, the CEO. I wasn't pitching my position that I currently have, but I was pitching myself as an active partner and someone that is able to give 15 plus years of industry experience to this endeavor. Like I said, I was in heavy detox mode. So
also. Marc's last venture was GrummelWorks, yeah? Was also
Yes.
onboarding independent developers. So
yeah, so that's now Charles is plugging my old consulting agency. So yes, thank you for that, Charles. So I was working independently on my own ventures, doing pretty much exactly what I'm doing right now. So total biz dev, partnering people, not necessarily with streamers, but partnering independent developers together with other cohorts so that they could turn their sort of specs in their GDDs into full fleshed out games, and then tuning and feedbacking those games. So a lot of my ins and outs at Capcom was working with the content analysis group in Osaka. So pretty much every single game that came out from Rockstar Capcom from 2005 to 2010 was tuned and feedbacked by groupings that were either managed by myself or a larger group between myself and my cohorts in Osaka. So pretty much tuning and feedback is giving the special sauce by getting all of these analytics together. So my goal with my consulting group GrummelWorks was to pretty much bridge the gap with all of these ideas and turning them into realities. Charles was extremely interested and taken by that. Our executive chairman, Dr. Yu, was also very, very taken by that, and we decided to push forward. And I became a full member of the team in October of last year. And ever since then, we've been just full gunning it, trying to get as much a trajectory and positive feedback from just everyone we talk to about the platform, and all of the developers that want to see all these cool things invested, like Charles had mentioned, the micro investment engine, and just differences from your standard de facto distribution service, just giving you a key to unlock a license to play a game. We don't want that. We want you to own the games. We want the portion that you're investing in your money to give into these artists so that they can create more things. So that was sort of where we met, how Harry met Sally.
Okay, so I have one last question, and we'll get to the final plug for the pod. But it's this: what is this venture? What have you guys have learned doing this venture? Now, this might be a little early to ask this question, but I think it's interesting. Like you're going into a new angle, both utilizing strengths you both have. So, what is this? Have you learned anything from this so far? Or should I ask this maybe a year or so down the road when it really gets rolling?
This is one of those questions that's just so broad, it's hard to know where to start. Because I have learned so much since starting this thing. I guess one of the things I've definitely noticed is that I'm still learning, by the way, still trying to figure this out, is how to code switch when talking to different groups of people, right? Obviously, what your average venture capitalist wants to hear in San Jose is a lot different than what developers actually want to hear when you're talking to them. In fact, nobody likes it when you sound too serious and corporate. Everyone gets angry. Right? But obviously the language you have to use when you're, begging for money, very different. Another thing I learned is starting a business, not all that glamorous, See, what CEO really means when you're doing a startup is your job is every job you haven't hired somebody to do yet. You have an accountant? No? You're the accountant. Do you have legal counsel? No? Better get good at reading. Yeah. You have a hiring manager? You have a programmer? Do you have whatever it is you don't have? You got to do it. So it's something. And obviously I wasn't trained to do most of it, so I've had to try and learn to fumble my way through all the things I haven't had help to do, which is obviously why I'm very thankful that Marc is here now.
And Marc?
I'm here for the long haul. The main thing to sort of piggyback on Charles is the main thing I learned is this is not necessarily your key term moniker of startup, entrepreneurship, all this stuff. We are just artists trying to promote art. We're trying to make games be not necessarily the forefront of what we're trying to do. We're trying just to connect like-minded people. And I think that the greatest thing that I've learned in my short time frame, it's like a little over 6 months now, is that there's no stopping this. This is an inevitability. The fact that we're going beta in a few short weeks is no surprise to anyone. Charles had worked on this extremely diligently and hard by himself for the majority of the lion's share. We've been around since around December of 2018, Charles with the inception of it, and then me coming in the back end of 2019 into now 2020 and beyond. So the key takeaway that I want to take in my short time frame is what I've learned is that what I'm doing is quite frankly the happiest place I am in my career right now. And that's not attributed to anything other than the fortitude and the knowledge that I'm learning every day from our executive chairman and from our CEO. Charles is a bit younger than me. I'm the old guy at 37. I'm the old man of the group. And I've been doing this for going on 15, 16 years now with all of these big boys. And I don't see Vox Pop as any short-sighted. I see us as that place, that boutique style environment that we can take from our early meetings when I met with Dr. Yu and Charles. We could take it from a place of silence to a huge voice, to a voice that cannot be, denied. We're gonna have a lot of ups and downs and bumps in the road, but what I want to put forth is that this is the most fun that I'm having in my career thus far, and I have no intention of stopping it at any time.
That is awesome. All right, gentlemen, I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
We have something.
We have something?
Thank you for your time.
No.
We've gotten sidetracked in a lot of
but that's the nature of a podcast. A podcast is all about casual conversation and just get a sense of, as much as this has been about your platform, I also feel like it was as much about both of you as well. And that's the best idea. I get a sense of who you are as a person, and also just what you love. Like Charles, you are a very passionate dude. You're very serious about this. I admire your drive. It's impressive. Marc, you definitely have a lot of enthusiasm, and I can actually sense how happy you are doing something like this. And I picked this up in this conversation, so will the audience. And it makes it easier to root for you and go for it. And that's my opinion, but that's just the way it goes. I enjoyed my time with you guys. Thank you very much for putting up with me. But
I do want to hold your feet to the fire with one point that you made, in that in a year, let's do this.
Oh, I'd love to.
Or maybe in person next time. Maybe we fly out. Maybe we do something in a mutual area where we're going to be able to do it a year and change.
Would you like to hear my crazy plan after this year for myself? I'll tell you my crazy plan.
Yes.
So I'm going completely freelance in a month. I'm quitting my day job and I'm just going freelance. Not because necessarily I'm seeing the glamorous of the money. I'm just, frankly, I want to do my own thing, and I really don't care how I have to do it. I'm just going to do my own thing from here on in. And what I want to do is, within a year's time, I'm going to get like a mystery machine, like maybe even paint like Scooby-Doo, I don't know, and travel across the country, Canada and the United States both, and interview amazing people. So maybe what I'll do is, when I'm on the road and doing my wild and crazy odyssey, maybe I'll come bump into you guys.
You got to meet us in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York, sir. We will be here front and center in Williamsburg. We'll be here with open arms. We'll get some pizza.
Okay, that sounds like a deal. Next year, we'll figure out a way of doing it. And you can hold me to it. And I try to keep my word. Just ask Mike. So I've enjoyed this conversation very much, and thank you guys for having it. Why don't you guys plug your platform one more time? Marc. Sorry, I'm thinking Mike and Indie Imprint. Marc, why don't you tell people where they can contact you for games again, and just how people can contact you guys in general. Does that work as a good way to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm gonna do my sort of 5-second elevator, and then Charles will take over because he is the figurehead, and I want him to have the last point.
Fair enough.
And any streamers, any content creators, any developers, any just overall internet personalities that want to match up with us, please go to www.voxpopgames.net. That is VOXPOPGAMES.net. You can also reach out to me directly at marc@voxpopgames.com. Now, if you were to just type in Vox Pop Games on any search engine, everything will pop up for us. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have IG. We're going to start venturing into TikTok pretty soon and getting all this other cool social media gatherings going forward. And please be sure to enter our invite on the static server for Discord that is available on our website. Please also sign up for our platform newsletter and beta. The beta is going to go live in spring, so within the next couple of weeks. We don't want to put a solid date to it, but we're working toward a solid date, I assure you. So that also is found on the website. And if you want to DM through Twitter or reach out to Vox Pop Holly, she's our social media manager, you can find her on all those available channels. And that's pretty much my sort of final piece. Thank you, Josh, so much. I really do appreciate this. And thank you to all of our partners and listeners and all of your audience members that are taking time out to just listen to us to try and achieve our dreams.
Thank you. And Charles?
I don't know that I have much to add to that. I think Marc was pretty complete on this.
All right.
Anyway, thank you as well, Josh. We're rooting for you.
Yes.
And hey, while we are doing the whole plug at the end bit, Vox Pop, one of the ideas behind the profit-sharing model was to help, wild, crazy dreamers going solo, right? So maybe some of our devs will want to partner with you.
That sounds. Hey, I'm all ears. That definitely.
We'll see you in Brooklyn for some pizza, and we'll give you some recos of what you want, but you need like the dirty dirties, just regular plain slice from Brooklyn. So we'll give you a bunch of pitches over the months. You do some investigation, and when we meet in the middle, we'll get the best slice in town, and then we'll see where we're at in the year.
That sounds like a plan for me. And that was my conversation with Vox Pop Media. I want to thank them both very, very much for their time. Charles, you, Marc Anthony Rodriguez, thank you very much. And I'll keep my promise when and if I get the opportunity to next year. But before I wrap this up completely and move on, I got something to read, courtesy of Vox Pop. So without further ado, #every voice matters. The Vox Pop Games platform is designed to primarily benefit independent game developers, let's players, and video game streaming personalities, and has already onboarded a slew of amazing independent games and online content creators to the platform that is gearing up for a beta launch this spring. Users can sign up for exclusive platform news, follow all social channels, and become a part of the Discord community at the following links, which I will have in the episode description. Please check them out. As is, guys, best of luck to you. I'm rooting for you. It truly was a pleasure. And with that, we're almost back to normal. I got another Kickstarter I have to promote. Beyond all that, my column at First Comics is up. I reviewed Mercy, which is a really cool image comic you should definitely check out. This week this was actually a very busy week. I got to meet some cool magazine publishers. I have a challenge from one. I got some other stuff to read in the other. And I'm just looking forward to really getting started on the next phase. I have to count down and it's driving me nuts, but I did take a big step this week. I got my level 1 first aid, which I'm really happy I got. And now I'm just counting down and doing my best to be a very good boy. It's hard. Oh, is it hard? But I will do it. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. That is right. This podcast is now officially on Stitcher. You can listen to it now pretty much with virtually any player on the planet. So do so. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pentellaresco. You can listen to all archived episodes there. You can subscribe and share as you will. My books, The Watcher, Stormmaster, and Wandering God, available through MirrorWorldPublishing.com. My merchandise is available at jpentellaresco.redbubble.com. More merch is coming, especially based off a very quote I did in this very episode. Beyond all that, my Twitter and Instagram is at jpentellaresco. My Facebook page is Joshua Pentellaresco, author podcaster. Go there if you want to see what's coming next. Stay inspired, keep doing your thing, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Josh.